right, guys. Today, last time we talked about political parties and the two major political parties and some beliefs of the third parties. Today, we're going to talk about candidates for political office and how we judge those candidates and the qualifications. So, we are in an election year. We are in an election year this year, and 100 million people in the country this year are going to choose a candidate for president. So, what are things that people look at when choosing a candidate? And there are different things. Standard. So this is a vocab word that you should probably know. An incumbent is someone who's running for reelection. It's someone who already has a job who's running to be reelected. So you might want to write that down. That's a vocab word you should probably know. Write that on the left. Definition on the right. Some of my PowerPoints are a little out of date, but obviously right now President Trump is the current president. He is running for reelection, so he would be called the incumbent. So if you hear that word on the news or in the news talking about the election, that just means someone has a job and they're rerunning. In the United States, incumbents generally have a huge advantage. You can see this orange line is the incumbents that won re-election or win the election. It's almost 90% of the time. Look here, it was almost 100% of the time they won because they have a lot of different advantages. A little more up and down in the Senate, but you kind of see 80, 90% of the time the incumbent who's running for re-election wins. Generally with presidents, and the incumbent president has won every election in this country since 1992. So that's the last 28 years. The incumbent president has won re-election. So they have some advantages. A candidate, and you might want to know this one as well. So you might want to write this down on the left. A candidate is someone who is running for political office. So we're talking about a political candidate. It is someone who's running for a political office. It could be Palm Coast School Board. It could be dog catcher of Flagler County, or it could be president of the United States. They're all candidates. They're being elected. So there are certain constitutional requirements to be president, senator, or congressman. You do need to know these qualifications. So you might want to write down constitutional requirements on the left. And then on the right, the qualifications for president is you must be a natural born citizen. You cannot be a naturalized citizen. You have to have been a citizen as soon as you were born. So you either had to be born in the United States or have parents that were citizen. You have to be 35 years old. That's why I'm not running for this election, because I am not 35. And you also have to have lived in the United States for 14 years. So if you're a natural born citizen, but you just moved and you lived somewhere your whole life and you just moved back 5 years ago, you can't run for president. Those are the requirements to be president. 35, natural born citizen, and live in the country for 14 years. You need to know that. These are the strictest qualifications for any office in the country because it's the most important office in the country. Okay, for Senate, you must be 30 years old. You have to have been a citizen for 9 years. You don't have to be a natural born citizen. So you could have been born in France, moved here, become a citizen, but you have to have been a citizen for 9 years. So Mrs. Parsons, who talked to us, she has not been a citizen for 9 years. She cannot run for Senate. And you have to live in the state you're going to represent. So if I want to represent Alaska, I have to live in Alaska. I can't represent Alaska and have lived in Florida my whole life. House of Representatives, this is the least requirement. You have to be 25, a citizen for 7 years. You also have to live in the state that the district's located. So Marco Rubio is a senator from Florida. He is over 30 years old. He is a citizen for over 9 years, and he lives in Florida. So president's 35, Senate's 30, House of Representatives 25. Citizen requirements for presidents your whole life. You have to be a natural born citizen. 9 years for Senate, 7 years for House. And then the Senate and House, you also have to live in the state you're going to represent. There are different state and local requirements for Florida. So Florida has governor, mayor. There are different requirements. I believe the requirements for governor are you have to be 30 years old and you have to have lived in Florida for, let's see, I should know this. Let me look it up. Check it, fact check it right here. Let's see, the qualifications for governor. You have to be 30 years old and you have to have been a resident of Florida for 7 years to be governor. So that's the requirements for governor. All right. So those are the qualifications that you have to have for each office. You do need to know that. The next thing we're going to talk about is how do we evaluate candidates? what are the different factors? And there's a lot of them: qualifications, ideas, political ads, debate performance. How do we judge candidates? So the first one are qualifications. What past experience would make the candidate good for the job? So you want to write that down on the left, qualifications, and then you want to write that down on the right. What past experiences would make them good for the job? So our presidents, 14 vice presidents have become president. That's obviously good experience because you were vice president. 4 presidents went on directly to become president. So what past experience? Were they a senator? Were they a governor? Were they vice president? Were they a businessman like Donald Trump? What past experiences would make them good for the job? So here are some 18 presidents were former state governors. 6 presidents were secretary of states. Hillary Clinton, obviously not president, but she was secretary of state. A lot of our presidents were military heroes. For example, Dwight D. Eisenhower, he was never in politics. He was never in government. He was a military general. I believe that Donald Trump is our first president ever to have not either been a military officer or have any government experience. His experience was business. But the first thing we do to evaluate candidate is we look at their qualifications, or another way to say that is their experience. A lot of our presidents have good educations. They went to Harvard or Ivy League schools, are very intelligent. Call these off presidents. So why would being governor make you good at president? Well, or to run for governor, you probably want experience, maybe being in the state legislature, or to be on the city council. Maybe if you're running for mayor, you were on the city council. So having some experience. If I'm running for school board, maybe I was a principal. And so you want to try and pick candidates that have experience that would make them good at the job. If I'm going to run for Senate, maybe I was a House of Representative member. If I'm going to run for governor, maybe I was a mayor. So you want to have some experience that would make you good at the job. So that's the first thing we look at: qualifications or experience. Donald Trump, like I mentioned, he was called an outsider. He didn't have any traditional experience or qualifications. His experience was that he was a businessman, and that appealed to some people because he wasn't in government. And so that actually helped him. Okay, so the next thing people look at are issue-based platform. You need to write this down: issue-based platform. This is a statement outlining the views of a candidate or a party. These are the beliefs of the candidate or the political party. And this is a big thing that people, in my opinion, probably one of the biggest things that people look at is, does that candidate have the same beliefs as I do? So yes, they look at experience, but do they have the same beliefs? Last time we talked about Republican, Democratic Party. So you see some of the Democratic Party platform: extend tax cuts for middle-class families, invest in clean energy for the environment, strengthen Medicare and Social Security, give tax breaks to bring companies to America, marriage equality for all Americans. So if I believe in all those things, then I'd want to vote for the Democratic candidate probably. We look at the Republican platform: national security, less government, lower taxes, faith and family values, strong rule of law. So if I believe in those things, I might want to vote for the Republican candidate. Another thing people look at are the debates. A debate is when 2 candidates argue or debate over the issues. In the primary, it's people of the same party that debate. But once we get to the general election, when it's Republican versus Democrat, they debate. So President Trump just had a debate with Joe Biden 10 days ago, and they asked him about COVID and the economy and racial justice. And the 2 candidates expressed their beliefs so that people can choose a candidate whose beliefs best represent them. Debates are generally one of the last things in a presidential election that have a big impact on the outcome. So another thing are political advertisements. These could be radio ads. These could be flyers that show up in your mail. These could be TV ads, internet ads. And you'll see them say, like, I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message. Or I'm President Trump, and I approve this message. And they sometimes are positive ads where they try and talk about their accomplishments. And sometimes they're attack ads where they try and explain why the other candidate's bad for the job. And you do have to be careful, like all news, you have to consider the source. So if it's an ad saying bad things, here's President Obama saying bad things, but it's paid for by his opponent, Mitt Romney, you have to kind of decide whether that is true, maybe look at the source of information. But again, these ads. So what do people look at when choosing a candidate? What's their experience? What are their beliefs? What are their political ads? How they do in the debate? People want to pick someone that has the same beliefs as them, who they think will represent them. So, and you should have this. You should have written this down. Political ads. Make sure you write that down. Okay. So bias, we're going to talk more about this next week when we talk about media bias and bias. Bias is prejudice against or for a person, thing, or group. So you do, when you look at these political ads, you do have to look for bias. You know, if it's a Donald Trump ad saying about a bunch of bad things about Donald Trump, but it's paid for by Joe Biden, obviously Joe Biden has a bias against Donald Trump because he's trying to beat him in an election, and vice versa. And likewise, the news channel you're watching may have a bias towards one candidate, saying nice things about him, or a bias against one candidate. So here you see Romney's not the solution. He's the problem. But then it's paid for by Barack Obama, who's trying to defeat him. So obviously there's a bias there. We're going to talk more about that next week as well. Campaign finance. Candidates rely on donations to pay for campaigns. Campaigns cost hundreds and hundreds and billions of dollars. And so people donate to those campaigns. Okay. Yeah. I'll go over this real quick. So, are people or corporations paying for access? You have to be careful when you donate money to people because they might be trying to buy a candidate and make that candidate pay for them and kind of buy them so that they make services they want. So we have something called campaign finance where people have to disclose anytime they donate to a candidate, and candidates have to disclose where they get their money from. There are things called PACs. It's a political action committee. And these are things that corporations form to donate lots of money to candidates. So realtors may donate lots of money to a candidate who's pro real estate, or United Steelworkers might donate a lot of money to a candidate that is pro unions. And so we have to track that money to make sure that we're transparent and that there's no corruption in the system. Unfortunately, we have these things called super PACs that can donate hundreds of millions of dollars to candidates, and it's very hard to track that information, and it kind of makes the process a little less transparent. But a PAC is a political action committee. We're going to talk about that next week, and you do need to know that. So again, super PACs support a candidate or party. So you see this super PAC robot with unlimited political cash, and it leads to a lot of kind of division and maybe possibly more corruption in the political system. But this is a way that someone can form this political action committee, raise tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, and donate it to a candidate. Okay, what do you call someone who's running for office? A candidate. Where do you find qualifications for president and Congress? That's in the Constitution. How long must a president candidate been a U.S. citizen? Their whole life. What are the things we judge candidates on? Their experience, their belief in issues, their debates, and their political ads. Okay, I think we're done. Yay!